Okay. Wow. Um, I just want to congratulate the two winners this past Sunday and Monday who survived round one of the playoffs. And the first game was decided after the Sunday night game. King David, yes, the King David, defending his throne against Mr. Andre Jones. I said in the matchup, Colin, I didn't think Julio Jones was gonna sit, but without Julio Jones, man, there was a lot of shit Andre needed to happen. Unfortunately, it did not happen for him. But even despite that, a miracle kicker in Nick Novak, who I certainly have had for 12 weeks of the season, coming through with 19 points, which is definitely going to be a controversial topic into things to come for this league. We're not going to get into that right now. Let's enjoy the playoffs. But unbelievable performance by Nick Novak. If there was ever a time where you needed Nick Novak to transform into an RB1, well, he did it there. David does prevail. A lot of questionable calls, though. David is one to certainly throw some darts and gamble. I know that's his calling card. Taylor Gabriel was definitely the trump card that was played, and benching Dante Moncrief for him. So sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. In this case, David's decision did win, and despite having Doug Martin on the bench, it did not affect him. He prevailed victoriously. This next matchup, however, well, I'd be 100% honest with you. I saw the lead after the Sunday night game and totally not even what's the word I'm looking for? It didn't even register in my head that Brian had New England's defense. So I get out of the shower and I'm noticing that Brian's winning, and I said, "What the hell? Did like New England have two bombs to Malcolm Mitchell?" Well, then I noticed that New England's defense was still on the board, and I'm thinking to myself, "Oh my god!" Now, at one point, I was like, "They haven't given up any points," so I was like, "There's probably still a chance." But I got news for all of you, man. I think up until the third quarter, it looked like Brian was about to smooth sail. But the way this shit happened, two special team fumbles putting Baltimore into New England territory, killed some momentum there. Definitely brought their point total down. Dion Lewis was a non-factor. It was more of New England's defense giving up points and Malcolm Mitchell only showing up for the first half. I think Baltimore kind of game planned for him in the second half. But needless to say, I'm back. So congratulations to Mr. Maxwell, and he advances to the semifinal round. My overall thoughts on round one. Wow, what a way to like everybody included, even the two teams that had buys. What a way to just kind of wet the bed, guys. I mean, wow. I cannot remember an opening round of playoffs being this low scoring. I mean, the Brian Max matchup, nobody hit 100, and these two were in play. Like, playoff nerves may be coming into factor. I don't know what the hell it is, guys. And then a low scoring affair, which was like 105 to like 113. And yeah, two low scoring games. The two teams that had buys barely got over 100. Myself 110, and I believe Johnny's was somewhere between 100 and 110. I think he might not even have gotten that. I don't know, but wow. Um, yeah, my quick thoughts on that. Wow, what a way to wet the bed, everybody. So without further ado, I know this is extremely early. I am going to be breaking down the matchups coming ahead. This is actually Tuesday. I made a message saying that it would be on Wednesday. However, I have some time. I want to make sure that this podcast gets out in time for you guys to enjoy. So without further ado, here we go. All right, quick little introduction. The semi-final round, the first game I want to break down. There is a lot of history between these two teams. Tons of history. These two teams, they go way back. One of these teams decided that he wanted to share some thoughts and ideas and eventually became a coaching tree. Um, Things then eventually looked at the coaching tree was going to work out. Both of these teams finished as the top seeds one year, only to get knocked out in the semifinals and watch as Paul became victorious as the champion. Next season, these two went back to the semifinals. Same brackets. They won, faced each other in a Super Bowl, and the master, if you want to call it that, reigned over the pupil. So, and we remember the Vernon Davis donut when he needed 9 to win, 8 to tie. That won myself my first title. There's a lot of history that goes back. These teams, ever since that Super Bowl, have been in a division together at least twice. So there is a little bit of like a, I guess if you want to call it like a friendly rivalry. Both of these teams know each other well. I would say that they know the calling card really well. But is that really going to come into factor and into play? Let's go to the resume. Maxwell officially winning is tied for second place all time. Believe it or not, he is tied for second place all time in semifinal appearances. This is going to be his third. He is tied with Brian for second all time. Um, Max's resume, as you all know, he does have one Super Bowl appearance. Unfortunately, he did not win that Super Bowl appearance. So there is a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? There's a little bit of experience here. He did not make the playoffs the last 2 seasons, but the 2 seasons before that, he did make the playoffs. So he's back in here, and he did win his own division. So Maxwell looks to uh, see what he can do here against the resume for this one. I'm not gonna showboat or anything like that, but most semifinal appearances of all time, tied for the most Super Bowl appearances of all time. One of two teams to go back to the Super Bowl. 7 game playoff streak, which is the most active all time in this league. David held the record of 6 until he got knocked out last season, and obviously the championship ring to prove. And that is myself, the commish. Um, this is going to be one of the most interesting matchups. And before I get into it, guys, before I get into this matchup, I said these playoffs. I think when you look at it, the number one and number two seeds, I think pretty much everybody kind of expected it to be like that. It doesn't matter what order, but I think people kind of expected those two teams to make it. However, there's been a lot of weird things happening this year, and it's been very interesting. Been very interesting to say the least. And I said in the podcast last week that this playoffs and this Super Bowl might come down to the best manager and the best decision making possible. And because I think top to bottom, I would think that myself and Johnny are probably up there from top to bottom, probably most deep rosters. So, but weirder things have happened. Let's get into it. And the reason why I'm doing this today is because nothing is set in stone. So I don't think I would get a day's time to decide this quite yet. Without further ado, we are going to break down the semi-final matchup. Kicking off quarterback matchups, Big Ben Roethlisberger, who completely vomited, completely shit, completely just disgusting performance in the snow against Buffalo. 2 points. We talk about the home road splits. That's not something you want to look forward to. And then speaking of a guy who in the first half had -6 or -4, I can't even remember, but I was looking at that and I was like, Jesus, Carson Palmer. So both of these guys are coming off of horrendous performances. Um, I want to start with the Max side of the ball first, and then I'm going to get to my take on my side. As gay as this sounds, and as terrible as Carson Palmer has been all season, and I'm against this guy. I'm not going to tell you who he should start, who he should sit, for obvious fucking reasons. But to be 100% honest, I do believe that this is the right call in Carson Palmer. He's been a terrible, terrible, terrible fantasy pick this year. He's just been awful. I mean, there's nothing else to say and defend him on that. Picks after picks, sacks after sacks. It's not good. Good news for Palmer. He's serviceable. I'm not going to say he's better at home. He's serviceable at home. So that's something I want to just throw out there. But the reason why I believe that this is the right call is even though I think I would normally go with Tyrod Taylor over Carson Palmer any day of the week, Tyrod Taylor could be on a short leash. I don't know why they're thinking about benching him, it's not his fucking fault, guys. But if Tyrod Taylor takes one series, either gets sacked or throws a pick or goes three and out, he could be on a short leash and just ruin your playoff season. Which is why the matchups, the Cleveland and Buffalo matchups, there's some stock on both teams. I think it's a good call not to start any of those guys. We talked about Tyrod Taylor. He's on a short leash. He could get yanked and get max -2, and that's what he has to live with. I actually think this is a smart, manageable call. The other thing is Terrell Pryor. I mentioned in the podcast before. It's going to be very difficult to see how he works with Robert Griffin because I don't think Griffin can hit those complicated routes like those other quarterbacks could. And he has to rely on the deep ball. And you saw on the flea flicker, they just knew it was coming to Pryor. I think that's a smart bench. And so I actually like the management call on those two. And on my side of the ball, Sammy Watkins on the bench. It was nice to see the guy score. Glad that he's healthy and all that, but one, he still doesn't look right to me. And if Tyrod Taylor does get pulled in this game, I could be looking at 3 to 5 points, and that's what I'm left with. So I think the management calls on both sides of the ball, I don't have a problem with. Ben Roethlisberger. The home road splits, yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's actually truly a thing. I couldn't believe, I don't know what to say. Ben Roethlisberger, the one optimism I have for Ben Roethlisberger, games where either Le'Veon Bell does everything or the games where Roethlisberger wets the bed, he usually bounces back in a nice performance. However, and I stress the word however, um, road split games, two of those games he's gone over 20 points, and that was against Washington and Indianapolis. Beatable defenses. Since he is a very serviceable defense, I say serviceable just a little bit, but what I'm trying to say here in this kind of matchup, ladies and gentlemen, is that um, I am very optimistic. I usually, whenever Bell does all the workload, their game plan changes the next day. When I'm looking at calling a predictor in this matchup, I think Palmer hasn't been bad at home. I understand that. I give him. I don't know if I would give him the slightest of edge. It's close. I would say Palmer gets 22, and I would say Ben probably gets 20 on the dot. I think these projections are right on the money. To be honest, this is a matchup that is, um, in my personal opinion, and I think you can't even argue it at this point. I think these are the two teams that have the best wide receiver combos in the league. Talking about Antonio Brown and T.Y. Hilton taking on Jordy Nelson and Odell Beckham. To be quite honest with you guys, I think I mentioned a max. Now, granted, I didn't expect the whole Brian team to put up a dud, but the thing I mentioned about Max's strategy between these two is that they've never synced together, which is why I think the performances have not been good. Jordy Nelson and Odell Beckham, they haven't quite synced. And I said they needed to get like 20 points each. Well, 18 and 19, that was as close as you're going to get to 20. That was a positive sign for Max's side of the ball. Breaking it down matchup based, I would say Nelson on paper looks like he has a safe matchup. The one thing I'm noticing about the Bears defense though is that they've been decent against number one wide receivers. Golden Tate was kind of held in check or wasn't as explosive. They held Odell Beckham in check. The only receiver I remember that went off against them was Hilton, and that's due to the fact that Hilton has the ability to go into the slot. Um, Off the top of my head, I'm going to scroll down onto my, well, crap, my phone is off, but I'm going to check Jordy Nelson's game log. And against the Bears last time, he got 1 point. Um, Absolutely, I don't think that's going to be the case. But the Chicago Bears, I don't know if it's because they play a lot of zone. That's what they're known to do, and their defense is banged up. So I'm not going to say Jordan Nelson puts up another dud, but this is on the road. We don't know how Green Bay is going to perform on the road. We get that kind of thing. But the thing with Jordy Nelson is, it wouldn't shock me if he got max at least 10. Just because I feel like the Bears, if they're giving up a big play, it's usually a flag. Marvin Jones was held on pass interference calls twice, so they have no problem grabbing onto somebody. And the emergence of Devontae Adams. So there's a lot of things to think about. Odell Beckham also. Now, one play. That's all the guy needs is one play to finish inside the top 15 for wide receivers. The slant outran the whole Dallas secondary. Um, Now you got a guy in Darius Big Play Slay. Um, so after the bye, people want to talk about Detroit's defense. I'm sure Max watches the Fantasy Football Network. It's entertaining. I don't watch it for. I'll get some advice. Don't get me wrong. It's good to have some outside sources. But the thing that I like about them is just that they're entertaining. Anyway, off topic. Odell Beckham. The Detroit defense hasn't gotten better. What they've just been going, they're not going no huddle anymore. So they're taking time, selecting their play calls. They're saying, you know what, let's limit the opposing. And I do think with Stafford's thumb injury, you're going to see a lot of that. So they're going to try to keep the Giants off of the field as much as possible. I do fully expect Slay to shadow Beckham. I think that goes without saying. Um, it's going to be a good matchup. I think anytime the only way I think Beckham ever gets shut down is if you talk smack to him and it gets in his head and he loses his emotions and stuff like that. But needless to say, I wouldn't say that this is something to panic over about. Um, so I do think that worst case scenario for these two wide receivers, like they've been all season, is if these two both don't hit, it's usually like 10 or 12. So you can live with it. Obviously, you want more, but it could be a lot worse. On to my side on this elite wide receiver combo, Antonio Brown and T.Y. Hilton. And before I even talk about my stuff, all four of these guys that I've mentioned in this matchup are top 10 wide receivers, which would indicate they are wide receiver number ones. Um, Antonio Brown. So this, I believe, is three straight games where Cincinnati has held him onto 100, under 100 yards. Well, that's a good statistic, and I think that's very impressive, Cincinnati. My thing is, and I'm speaking optimism because I'm 100% confident, and I know how this team zigs and zags every single week in, week out. I'm not saying Antonio Brown goes the fuck off, no, but I do think that he is going to be more serviceable than what he was last week, despite the home road splits. This is Ben's guy who didn't get a touchdown last week, and in the huddle, give me the ball. They're playing soft. Let me get it. Yada yada yada. Um, because a lot of the times how a Cincinnati plays Brown, due to the fact that they see him every single season, they like to guess on bracket coverage. Like if he does a double move, a safety will shade over the top, or they'll bring the safety down to guard the post. Simple stuff like that. So it's usually with the deeper routes to negate Antonio Brown. So there's probably going to be a lot of drag routes. There's probably going to be ziggy zaggy kind of Antonio Brown type of thingies. T.Y. Hilton's the interesting one because I don't know what the hell is going to happen in this matchup. I'm not going to bench him. Flat out, that's just you can't do that. And especially with Moncrief hurting, he just racks up targets and that big play, just like Beckham in the slot, going deep. That's his specialty. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with Xavier Rhodes because I don't think Rhodes goes into the slot. Or doesn't go in there exclusively because that's very hard for a corner to do that. Their slot, Captain Munnerlin has played their slot and he's been a very serviceable corner. Um, this does look like a game where Hilton could be taken out, and I fully can admit that. I fully will. He's coming off of two 20-point back-to-back performances. Uh, But my bottom line is this: if he can get over the top and Harrison Smith is not there anymore, something tells me that the safeties are going to have to play back a lot. Unless it's a crucial fourth and short, third and short type of situation. I don't know if Mike Zimmer's defensive scheme can be the same without Harrison Smith. I do think they're going to get a lot of pressure on Luck. That I fully admit, and I fully expect them to get picks. But like we saw with the Jets game, now granted the Jets corners suck. Hilton had a big cushion, and if Rhodes isn't on him, I think we can see some type of cushion being on T.Y. Hilton there, which would lead me to believe that I would not expect a touchdown, but I would expect a lot of catches. So that's my philosophy there. This is where things get a lot interesting, and this is the reason why moving forward I'm talking about. This is why I've decided not to wait an extra day because Max, I can assure you the everybody else that's on my list is up for debate, except for Jordan Howard. So Jordan Howard, I'll talk about him really quickly, and then I'll go to your side of the ball. I love the guy. There was a stat I retweeted today. He's got better numbers than Ezekiel Elliott, And some of you might be saying, wow, really? Well, he's just been a phenomenal running back. His yards per carry average is almost at 5. His elusive rating is a lot better than Ezekiel Elliott's as well. I think this guy Zeke is clearly the better rookie running back, but the most impressive rookie running back is this man right here, Jordan Howard. He's been matchup proof. He loves running in between the tackles. This is a guy who really likes contact. Green Bay held him to his worst game of the season. They limited Howard. It was really bad. I think it was like 2 points he got me in that Thursday night game. Um, but needless to say, he is officially the volume king for this team, and you always got to go with the volume, I think, in any type of situation, which would warrant me to believe at home and even in a bad matchup, I think he puts up high end to low end running back one numbers against this Green Bay defense, who is, in my opinion, they're not what they were in the beginning of the season. They're still okay, though. And next we go to I'm going to talk about Max's running backs, and then I'll explain what's going on with my roster because this could definitely be a game changer. So after being benched for Max's team, it looks like he's decided to go with the man, J. My thing with Jay Ajayi is volume, a lot of volume. No Ryan Tannehill. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, to be quite honest. But the thing about Jay Ajayi, he's going to see a huge stacked box. Now, I understand the Jets' defense sucks, and because they've been getting blown out, their defense is getting tired. They're on the field for too long. Carlos Hyde had a field day. Um, they did a good job against the Giants until this is what the Jets' defense did. Other than that one run in the first half, Ajayi, I think, up until the fourth quarter, only had like 40 yards and a touchdown. It wasn't anything spectacular. But then once the defense got gassed, Miami rode him. I would expect, because this is a game where we clearly know Miami's going. Okay, I wouldn't say that clearly, but unless Matt Moore wets the bed, I mean, like this looks like a game where they got to ride Jay Ajayi. So I think just like Jordan Howard, Jay Ajayi's volume. I know he's been pretty bad the last few weeks, but the volume is still there, and that's something that you can't take away. Only thing that could definitely hurt his value into a low end running back too is Damian Williams was seen on a lot of goal line packages, which is retarded. But hey, I'm not complaining. But that would be my only concern. And then even though Todd Gurley delivered in a plus matchup for the first or second time this year, T.J. Yeldon, not the sexiest of matchups, but again, Dion Lewis, like I think Max is realizing that they're saving him for the playoffs. He doesn't ever want to go that route again because it almost cost him a match. TJ Yeldon, if it's just Yeldon, okay. But even when I had the guy, I mean, I know him. I don't think he's that great of a running back. I think he's a good situational, rotational dude to have. If he has to carry the load, again, we talk about volume. He's going to get you 10. His upside is like 12. It's just there's just too much for him to handle. But obviously, if another running back was to come in here where they have him projected at 8 points, I think that's what he kind of gets you. But this is why my lineup is not set in stone. So a guy who's been so good all season, so consistent, best pick of the draft, in my personal opinion, and I don't think that there's any other pick that was a better value pick. Melvin Gordon, staying healthy all season. The San Diego curse has to strike during the playoffs. It was only a matter of time, I guess. I don't know. Phenomenal runner. I've really grown to appreciate him as a running back. He's been carrying this team considering how bad Rivers has been of late. I don't know what the hell is going on. Um, so as of Tuesday, he is questionable. I don't have an update quite yet. The only thing we know so far is that it's a knee and a hip sprain. The fact that two injuries are listed leaves me to believe that the guy is going to take a week off. And if that's the case, this matchup gets very interesting. And I don't know if it's for the better or for the worse. The thing with Melvin Gordon, guys, if he is out there, Max, 100% will play him. I just think that he wants to be out there for the team is what he's saying, but we have to see if he's participating in practice drills. After the game, the trainers said that he was going to be okay. They just wanted to confirm with MRIs, so they did a low body scan. They found two sprains. The reason why I think this is more cautious is because he had microfracture knee surgery. And if the sprain is in that same knee, I don't even know that. My guess is the answer is yes, why they're so cautious. He's day to day right now. My gut feeling tells me that he does not play, which makes me completely change my roster 100%. And what do I mean by that? Well, then I'm forced to start Kenneth Farrow. Um, I, to be honest, I don't know how I feel about that. Last week, Farrow was the only healthy running back due to Melvin Gordon being hurt. He registered 10 fantasy points, 6 catches, 50 yards on 16 carries. Nothing spectacular. If you saw me in the chat, if Farrow is to be the lead guy, you're looking at Brandon Oliver 2 years ago, meaning he's 10 to 12 points. Uh, I don't see anything special with this kid. The only thing I like about him is that he's not afraid of contact and he likes to run up the middle. He doesn't bounce it outside. He's not as dynamic as Gordon. I think we all fucking know that. But he's a guy who does the job when his number is called. And I think he's the only physical presence inside type of runner that they have on the roster. But the reason why I'm getting a little frustrated with this is because if Melvin Gordon is out, Ronnie Hillman would be activated because Rivers gave Farrow a mouthful because of his pass protection, and we all know that. Because if you look at the game script, it would lead me to believe that Oakland would win this game, meaning that Kenneth Farrow could be very limited, and then essentially I'm looking at T.J. Yeldon when I know I have better options that can outproduce T.J. Yeldon on the other side of the ball. So this is a weird process. Whatever you see on here right now, what I'm going through, I don't know what's going to happen, which leads me to believe then here are the two guys I'm not starting against you. Number one, Doug Baldwin. Love the guy. Think he's phenomenal. Love him as a route runner, but he's been kind of cold of late, and they're against the Los Angeles Rams, who are the Seattle Seahawks kryptonite, and especially on a short week, no way I'm risking that. And I talked about it earlier, Sammy Watkins. I will not play. And Marvin Jones, for obvious reasons. He's a boomer bust wide receiver 3, and against the Giants defense, no thank you. Um, Flat out, that's anybody else's name that I did not call is up for discussion. So let's go down to the matchup a little bit further here. We're going to go into now. I know this is before waiver claim, so I don't know if you're going to claim a tight end. But when I look at tight ends right now, like there's nobody. Who are you possibly going to claim at a tight end spot? I don't see anybody you could claim. I thought McDonald was a good claim, but he's out. I don't see one person that could be a solid claim for this type of matchup. So it's Will Ty and Zach Ertz. Will Ty, I think by default, he's no worse than what's on the waiver wire, and but to be honest, I think he's like a tad bit better by like a point or two. Like these tight ends, man, you're throwing darts. I don't think Will Ty is a bad matchup, especially when you have the Detroit Lions coming to town. Zach Ertz has been very consistent. Last 2 weeks has racked up almost 30 targets, guys. Wow. Um, Tougher matchup with the Baltimore Ravens coming into town. Or no, they're traveling to Baltimore, which is even tougher. But I think game flow and the amount of targets, and due to the gotta say it, due to the health of Jordan Matthews, um, yeah, it would I wouldn't say 30 plus like or he racked up a lot of targets last week. I think Wentz has finally found his favorite wide receiver, and that to me would be Zach Ertz. So I guess you gotta go with the continued production, especially when it's a tight end. You don't need to overthink it when they're on a hot streak. But my flexes as of right now, if Melvin Gordon was to play, my gut feeling tells me this is what my flexes would be. However, I could completely change everything. So the flexes as of right now are Rob Kelly and Steve Smith, whereas you have Larry Fitzgerald and Deshaun Jackson. Since I've been talking about my roster, I'll go on to you for a second. Larry Fitzgerald, um, he dropped a lot of passes last week, but I mean, what are you going to do? Put him on the bench? Um, yeah, this matchup, he hasn't found the end zone, but this is a guy who likes to make catches all day long. He's the only healthy receiver Carson Palmer has to go to. That is a good thing. But if New Orleans is looking at this tape, my gut feeling is they're game planning for, well, obviously David Johnson. But on those third downs, I would expect a lot of zone over the middle to bracket on Fitzgerald. It's just if Fitzgerald can break through that. Um, And then a guy who a lot of people started in a DFS due to the revenge game, Eagles factor, whatever you want to call it. Deshaun Jackson scored in Philly, of course. The thing with Deshaun Jackson, why a lot of people don't or even have to consider him, is because Kirk Cousins doesn't like throwing vertically down the field. They call one bomb for him every game, I feel like. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So it's 50-50 hit or miss with this guy. So can lightning strike twice? I will say it's not a bad call. 100%. I'm not going to knock you for that. And especially with Terrell Pryor into due to RG3 throwing to Terrell Pryor. I mean, I don't know what else you could do at this point. My side of the ball, Rob Kelly. I do like Rob Kelly for the fact that when I look at this matchup with the Redskins at home, they've played a lot better at home. Their first two games of the season they lost at home. It was to Washington and Pitt. But if I correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they've lost any other games at home since then. And the thing with Rob Kelly, if you believe that the Washington Redskins will win that game, my philosophy is I'd play Rob Kelly. Reason being, you're getting more volume. Jay Gruden said they wanted to use him a little bit more. They really didn't do that last week. He did get a few catches. I don't know if that's what he was talking about, but if he hits that touchdown, he's like if he gets the touchdown, he's a low end one, high end two type of thing. But if he doesn't, yes, that's where the boomer bust tag comes for with Rob Kelly. But the volume, he's getting double digit carries. He has yet to record a game since he's been the starter to get single digit carries. So I guess I would be using him. And Steve Smith against the Philadelphia Eagles. I do think this is an angry Steve Smith. Baltimore Ravens are no longer in first place. This is just my game script philosophy. The Ravens aren't in first place. It's the Steelers now. They just lost a close one in Foxborough. Mike Wallace is a little dinged up. I feel very confident in Steve Smith. Especially against the Philadelphia Eagles, and especially when they have the most finesse corners that are afraid to bump and run. They're going to be fighting with this, or he's going to be fighting with them, and they're gonna back down. I feel like I actually do like Steve Smith, despite having 3 games in a row where he's yet to have double digit points for fantasy production purposes. But like I said, if Gordon does not play, I would have to decide between these other two, Kenneth Farrow and the secret weapon who probably if I'm somebody facing this guy, I'm nervous as hell because he has the most consistent floor if he starts. That's Ty Montgomery. Now, I picked him up because I didn't want anybody else to have him because I had a feeling that he was going to be the starter. And this isn't hindsight. I did it before the game, so um, that was kind of my philosophy on that. The only other thing I want to say about this matchup is basically with his skill set, it makes their offense more dynamic. But he did get hurt or a little dinged up. I saw him running on the sideline, like holding his arm. He did have a shoulder injury. I don't know if maybe that pain came back, and if that's the case, and they say he's on the injury report and everything, I might not have the balls to do it, to be honest. But if you were to tell me there's a starting running back that gets a lot of catches and on return yards, you'd be a fool to turn it down, which is why I think I'm very tempted. And I don't know about this Kenneth Farrow dude. Like all I know is that he runs up the middle. So Max, whatever you see right now, this is not set in stone. Honestly, I'd say there's a 70% chance of that happening, and it all comes down to the health of Melvin Gordon. If Melvin Gordon goes through practice drills, if he's limited on Wednesday, full participant, then in the other practices, I'll give Gordon a go. If Gordon is not showing up for practices and limited and whatnot, and then they come up with a report saying something about he's not going to receive the bulk load of the carries, I got a big decision to make on my hands. I'm not even going to lie. And I remember you're going to have problems, but this is not the problem I would expect. I didn't expect a Ty Montgomery to reemerge into like the ultimate floor guy and then Melvin Gordon to get hurt. So that's not something I predicted. Anyway, I know we're going way in depth into this matchup. I'm not going to go too in depth with kickers. Talk about defensively. Good planning ahead with Miami. I'll fully admit that. Minnesota or Houston, they're both good matchups. Again, the only reason why I had Houston was because I didn't want anybody else to have them because I wasn't sure who I was going to play between both of you. So, bottom line, I got to go with Minnesota. Reason being, they're going to get more sacks than Houston, in my personal opinion. They both have they could probably get the same amount of picks, but the special teams factor is a bonus for Minnesota. Even though Sherrills has been out, they still have Cordero Patterson. So, I'm going to roll that. And they play a lot better at home. So that is my philosophy on thinking of the defensive side of the ball. Well, I don't know if I really can go deep into keys of victory. I think I covered a lot. And the reason why I can't go to keys of victory is because I don't think these lineups are set for my side of the ball. Yours, I would say, is okay. I mean, I don't know what you're doing. I'm not your coach, and I certainly am not going to give you advice to kind of help you beat me. But um, bottom line is, I'm thinking about two different types of lineup changes. I could go with a super floor lineup and try to go all running backs, which would mean it'd be Farrow, Howard, Kelly, and Montgomery. The reason why I would say me going that is because I feel like I would just take my 8 to 10 from those guys, hoping that Ben and AB come through. Obviously my upside with that lineup is not as great, and that's me saying that you know what, I think my floor is better than your floor. I'm just gonna play it safe and do that route. But I don't even know how I feel about that. The other with Melvin Gordon playing this, what you see right now in front of you is probably what's going to happen. But then again, anything can happen. I do think the quarterbacks are going to be close. I do think the receivers are also going to be a little bit close. I don't want to say just by looking at the projections, but between Nelson and Beckham, I think one of those guys has a decent game. I think the other one might kind of disappoint you, and I think I can kind of say the same for Antonio Brown and Hilton. The reason why I don't think Hilton will be a dud is because I don't believe Rhodes has been following around 24/7 and exclusively on guys, but when Hilton's the only guy you have to throw to, I mean, it's definitely a possibility. Um, I do like Howard and Ajay. I think both of them are both volume hogs. Uh, and then I think if Gordon was to play, I think the running back matchup is certainly an advantage on my part. But with him not playing, this gets very interesting because it's not that I think Yeldon's going to be a stud by any means, but my running backs then become a floor rather than a top 10 upside. I mean, that's common sense. Tight ends, I mean, if you're going by streakiness, you got to go with Ertz. And then the flexes again. Can Deshaun Jackson catch that long bomb? Can Fitzgerald lead the team in targets outside of David Johnson probably? And then Steve Smith, does the angry Steve Smith narrative, does that come into play? And then Mr. Kelly. Um, I think this is an interesting matchup if Gordon cannot go. I'm very superstitious. You know me. I don't call my own games. Just like on the NFL networks, they don't do that crap. But if Gordon is to sit out, I do think this is a very, very interesting matchup. Um, the projections that you see now are going to go way down on my side of the ball if Gordon goes out there. I'll say that Yahoo's probably going to have the projections at, as of right now, it's 135 to 121. I would say that without Melvin Gordon, I would consider this to be something like 128 to 123. That would be my projection, which would mean that it's very, very close. The management is what it comes down to on both teams. So this should be a classic. Oh, and one thing before after that matchup that I wanted to mention, I'm going way over the board on here, but the thing as far as points, I think it's been officially established that my team has been certainly on the boom or bust status, but it's been more boom than bust due to the 8-5 record that I have. If you're not including last week, so I would say it's not 50-50. I'd say something more 70-30 on the boom bust side of things, just kind of rounding math out. And then you have Max, whose team has certainly underperformed since the 3 game rivalry week. But it's going to be interesting. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, so I just wanted to throw that out there. All right, so next matchup, I'll try to make this a lot more quicker than the last one. If you guys are looking right now, you're like, wow, 30 minutes of that last one, and you probably didn't even listen to it. Well, unless you're driving somewhere and you want to listen to something, I don't know. So King David, wow. Um, in my opinion, this is the biggest surprise in the playoffs. I think the other game I think was a toss up. You could take it, but with Julio Jones going out, and Nick Novak getting 19 points, he moves on. David does have a title, taking on a guy who's still in search for his first playoff win. And I know David believes in curses. David knows all about it. Is the curse still for real? Last 2 weeks, Johnny's team has failed to hit 110 points. Is he starting to get nervous? And then David, somebody had mentioned to me that David had not gone over 130 since week 3. Yet he's here in this position right now. Something's got to give. Let's get into it. Funny how one ginger's got to rely on another ginger, or a daywalker, excuse me. Jay Fresh rolling out Dalton. Can't trust Russell. I get it. Colin Kaepernick, you got to roll him out. I'm sorry I got to speed through this crap, dude. My voice is killing me. I talked for so long. Mike Evans against Dallas. This could probably piss off Jay. Dallas has done a terrific job of limiting number one wide receivers. And if Mike Evans is to have a dead game, wow, you're opening the door for opportunity with David. I think Mike Evans gets you 12 points. Jordan Matthews. Against the Baltimore Ravens, if Jimmy Smith is unable to go, Wentz might have some room with Jordan Matthews, but he didn't look so healthy to me. But he did get double digits, so who knows? Something's got to give. Wallace. I saw you plan ahead for this move, and I do agree with it. You got to make sure this dude is healthy. I know he left the game. I don't know what it was, but he certainly could take that defense over the top if you saw Deshaun Jackson just do it. Michael Crabtree is another guy. I don't know what's going on. Is Carr hurt, or is he just sucking against Kansas City? I think that's the notion there. I think Crabtree and Wallace will cancel each other out, to be quite honest. Elliott and Miller, McCoy and Crowell. I'm going to go with McCoy and Crowell. What? I know. I know that's what you're saying, McCoy and Crowell. I know. I know. The reason why I'm going to say that, guys, LaShawn McCoy's against the Cleveland Browns. I like it better than Ezekiel Elliott's matchup against Tampa. Lamar Miller. The pick is in against Crowell. I don't even think they're honestly even in points of fantasy production, dude. They're not even that far apart. So, by that being said, I'll take David. Slight edge, though. I give Tyler Eifert the 100% nod in here. Both these tight ends play in the same game. Green was limited last week. Steelers beat reporter said that after the Giants game, they said it was kind of like a fluke. It's just the fact that he kind of caught all of his passes that were thrown to him. So, but Eifert's been on fire, dude. I was totally wrong about him. I thought he wouldn't be anything without AJ Green, Kelvin Benjamin, and Mark Ingram, Hopkins and Moncrief. I normally would say 100% J, but then now that I'm looking at it, oh my god. Was that DeAndre Hopkins? Yeah, DeAndre Hopkins. I don't like him 100%. Hell no. Dante Moncrief, I don't even like. Mark Ingram, I don't even like. Kelvin Benjamin, I don't even like. So draw, like I hate all these options, guys. I really do. I just do. No, actually, I think the you know what, slight edge to Jay. The only guy that, now call me crazy, the slight edge I give it to is Mark Ingram, and the reason being is because I think he could. I don't know. I see him doing something. Mark Ingram always performs in games where you don't expect him to do shit. However, this could also be a Tim Hightower game, so I don't know. But I've lost total faith in Kelvin Benjamin. I really have. I thought he was an excellent buy low when the trade deadline was happening. No, no, thank you. Kansas. I really like that defense. Green Bay against Chicago. Don't be so cocky about that. They'll probably get a pick or two though. Gostkowski and Novak, they're pretty good. Not much to say there. This is where I have to call this crap. If somebody was to ask me what do I want to happen in this matchup, because my matchup also might determine if me or Max plays one of you guys. Um, I think all season, and I think it would be pretty awesome. The thing that I want to happen and what do I think is going to happen are two different things, though. The thing that I would love to see happen, and 100% because I think it would be just hilarious how it turned out to be like that. And I know, like, of all the people that Johnny, if Johnny was to win, that he would want to face, I know for a fact, from a man-to-man perspective, it would be me. But from a this team's easier perspective, it would be Max. And I think the same could be say maybe like that's what his mindset would be. But Jay had for the first time ever has gotten his number one seed, but he's yet to win a playoff game. I have to choose a winner here, guys. This is tough. You look at it's 126 to 121. Kaepernick has explosive potential, guys. That scares me. I think Dalton has a better floor, but I could see Kaepernick beating him in that matchup. I don't know about Matthews when I'm thinking about it now. Michael Crabtree could be okay. I think McCoy goes off. I think Crowell is serviceable, but I think the flexes for David I absolutely loathe. Like I don't like it. Which would then say who knows? I don't know if you can trust Hopkins. I know he's a stud, man, but like it's fucking Brock Osweiler. And then Moncrief, you have to know with the health. My gut feeling is if Moncrief is unable to go, he's probably going to roll out Taylor Gabriel and throw that big play dart. Jay's team, the guys I'm not confident in are Miller, Benjamin, but you got to watch out for the health for Mike Wallace. Well, I think it's finally happening, guys. I think this is it. I gotta go with Jay. I think David has became a surprise. I think it's pretty cool that with whatever he did and he's in the semifinals. But Jay, I think you finally come through somehow, and the reason why I think you come through, even though I believe that McCoy and Crowell have decent games, I think David's MVP is Kaepernick, and when the MVP is a quarterback, and I think Dalton comes close to that, it's gonna be a tough one. But Jay, I think you edge out an ugly victory, though. I'm gonna say Jay wins one. Hold on, I'm thinking. Give me 121 to like 116, something like that. And Jay, I'd say you would win.